He was one of the few, the proud.
Elihue Parker was a soldier and a leader.
She was the ravishing beauty that stole his heart.
Yeah, we were both attracted to each other.
But when one of them suddenly vanished, a troubled past bubbled to the surface.
One of the men said that if they were back in the hood, he would put a cap in Elihue Parker's ass.
The search for the truth would lead investigators down a serpentine path of deception and lies.
If you go up to investigate a report that somebody made of a missing person, and the first thing they tell you is, talk to my attorney, that's an issue.
And a bizarre piece of evidence would reveal a treacherous act of betrayal, one that cut right to the heart.
I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I've never been in a situation like this.
This case had it all. It had greed, it had sex.
My exact words was, I ain't come out here for that. I did not come out here to kill nobody.
Louisville, Texas, July 31st, 2000. It's a hot summer day in this bedroom community of Dallas. At the local Marine Recruiting Center, it seems like just another day at the office, until 23-year-old Sergeant Elihue Parker fails to show up for work. Elihue's boss, Sergeant Greg Striblin, immediately fears the worst.
One thing about Parker was he never was late to work. So I called Parker, 6 o'clock, he ain't answer the phone. 7:30, no Parker. 8 o'clock, I have to call the command and let the command know what recruiters showed up to work and which ones didn't. Well, I called 8 o'clock, Sergeant Major, Sergeant Parker hasn't showed up to work.
If Elihue Parker says he's gonna be somewhere, he was there. And that's why all the people that work with him, they said there's something totally wrong.
The alarm bells started going off for him, and he decided to go look for him. He went to his apartment.
When Sergeant Striblin arrives at Elihue's apartment complex, he's relieved to see his co-worker's government-issued car parked in the lot.
Maybe he just overslept or something. I knock on the door and no answer. I knocked a few times, still no answer.
Hey, Parker!
So, hey, hello, Parker, you know, yelling out his name.
Sergeant Parker!
Even after Sergeant Striblin enters the apartment, there's still no response.
Parker!
But Striblin does notice something odd. The television is on in Elihue's living room and turned to the building's security channel.
You can actually turn your TV to a certain channel, and the security system at the apartment complex shows the entrance. You can actually look at the gate and see, you know, who it is before you let them in. So that the TV was on that channel, still showing the gate, and he just thought it was curious.
So at this point, he is very concerned. This is definitely raising some red flags.
His co-workers began to check the local hospitals to see if anything had happened.
There's no record of Elihue Parker at any of the local hospitals, or anywhere else for that matter.
I attempted to go to Louisville Police Department and file a missing persons report. They told me that since I was not a family member and it had not been 24 hours, that there was nothing that they could do at that time.
For now, the question of Elihue's whereabouts remains unanswered. But soon, another call will spur police into action, unleashing a search with no shortage of intrigue.
There is no clear indication of what happened to Sergeant Parker. He simply vanished into thin air.
Born in 1977, Elihue Parker was the son of a pastor and a devoted mother.
He grew up in the Central Florida, Orlando area, a man of high moral character, a salt-of-the-earth type person.
Known for his humility and quiet determination, Elihue was a good student and a good son, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do when he grew up.
He did all his high school years in Florida, and he immediately enlisted into the Marine Corps right after he graduated.
While on leave in 1995, Elihue returned home for a week of R&R.
Y'all ready? Come on, let's go!
While there, Elihue met up with his cousin for a double date. Though Elihue was with another woman, his cousin's date, Kimberly Hawkins, immediately caught his eye.
I was actually on a double date with his cousin, and it wasn't working out. And my friend was on a double date with him, and me and him just hit it off a lot more than his cousin hit it off.
I worked out for a good while today.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
What you do?
Calisthenics, of course.
Like Elihue, Kimberly was raised in Florida and grew up in a tight-knit, God-fearing family.
As far as love's first sight, no, but it was an instant attraction. Yeah, we were both attracted to each other. He's nice looking. Elihue's personality was pretty humble, very courteous. He's a gentleman at all times. Very rarely did he curse. He was a really good guy.
But while Elihue and Kimberly's chemistry was undeniable, their timing just wasn't right. Shortly after meeting, Elihue was deployed overseas. Although it seemed like their relationship was over before it started, when Elihue's tour of duty ended 12 months later, he wasted no time getting back in touch with Kimberly.
He was stationed in North Carolina at the time, and we started talking on the phone a lot more. And then I ended up going to visit him in North Carolina.
You have no idea how much I missed you.
I missed you too.
Soon after their passionate reunion, Elihue proposed to Kimberly.
He was supposed to be in North Carolina, but he surprised me and came to Orlando, Florida, and he proposed. I was upstairs. My mom had a two-story home, and he came in, and my mom was trying to get me to come out, and I was busy, and I didn't want to come out. So finally, she was like, come downstairs. And when I came downstairs, he was there at the bottom of the stairs with the ring. My first thought was, oh my God. I was surprised because I wasn't expecting a proposal. Of course, I said yes immediately.
Married in May of 1999, it wasn't long before Elihue's military career uprooted the newlyweds.
Elihue Parker worked his way up to being a recruiter sergeant in Louisville, Texas.
Kim was excited about being married to Elihue and being the wife of a Marine sergeant. She wasn't necessarily as excited about coming to Louisville.
I'm a beach girl, so most of the time when you hear of Texas, you think of rodeos and horses and stuff, and that's total culture shock for me. So I wasn't excited at first.
Elihue's new recruitment schedule also took some getting used to.
Hey, baby.
There's long hours that are involved. You're getting up early in the morning, and you're gone 12 to 16 hours.
Well, when are you coming home?
Look, I got about 2 more hours, okay?
I'm getting tired of this. I'm always here by myself.
But any reservations Kimberly might have harbored about their move seemed to melt away when she landed a job of her own.
She got a job at a telemarketing firm in Carrollton, and she did make some friends.
They treated me kind, and my mind was changed. It's a pretty nice city.
Blessed with a new home, friends, and good careers, by the summer of 2000, the Parkers seemed to have it all. Which is why co-workers are shocked when Elihue fails to show up for work on the morning of July 31st.
That sent off red flags and warning lights to his coworkers.
Elihue's co-workers aren't the only ones concerned about him.
Kimberly did contact the police, but it hadn't been 24 hours at that point, so they wanted to wait to file a missing persons report.
With Kimberly beside herself and friends and co-workers worried sick, the search for Elihue Parker is about to shift into high gear. But nobody knows the bizarre mystery that's about to unfold, or the horror that awaits them once that mystery is solved.
With the passage of time, I've really come to realize how heinous of a crime this was, how thoughtless of a crime this was, how bad this crime was.
For Marine Sergeant Elihue Parker and his new wife Kimberly, the summer of 2000 was supposed to be a time of celebration. They had a budding marriage, new jobs in a new hometown, and a bright future.
They were newlyweds, just a young couple, just starting off life.
They seemed happy. She was still young and wanted to do things, and he had his main goal was for the Marine Corps.
And they both knew that he was going to be the focus, because while on recruiting duty, they understood that it's his career that they were both trying to build together.
But the newlyweds' world darkens on Monday, July 31st, 2000, when Elihue fails to show up to work.
If he said he was going to be somewhere and do something, he was there. That was one of the things that was really threw a red flag in the whole deal.
Elihue's co-workers at the Marine Corps recruiting office report him missing, as does his wife, Kimberly. After receiving the reports, investigators reach out to Kimberly at her new job.
We're sorry to bother you at work.
We just wanted to follow up.
On a missing person, the people that have the best chance of finding him are the people that are closest to him because they know what their habits are.
Has he ever done anything like this before?
No, never. This is not like him.
With Kimberly unable to offer any additional leads, detectives reach out to Elihue's commanding officer, Sergeant Greg Striblin.
Are you aware of any threats or incidents that were made against Sergeant Parker?
Actually, yes. Some guys a few days ago came into the office questioning him about his vehicle.
I'm sitting in my office, and all of a sudden, these guys come up to the door of the office. They pointed to Parker and asked Parker, hey, come on outside, in an aggressive kind of way. So I was like, okay, what's going on here?
Can I help you, gentlemen?
Yeah, we need the keys to the car, man.
Keys to what car?
Man, stop playing stupid, man.
Some unidentified men confronted Elihue, wanting to know where the car was, threatening Elihue, telling Sergeant Parker that he was stealing from them and that things that they owned were inside that car, and they demanded that they get them back.
Look, guys, I'm at work right now. It's a government facility. If you're not joining the Marine Corps, you need to get out of here.
They were kind of trying to get into it, or at least start an argument.
Look, man, don't make, man. I'm about to get loud out here. We need those keys, man.
Elihue told them to come back later, but Striblin says the men refused to leave.
Come on, man, let's go, man.
Hey,
we need that
look,
now.
Let's go get the stuff out, guys. I just need you out of here. Let's go.
Let's go.
There were words exchanged between the two parties.
We calling the clown, dog. Keep your hands off me. Let's go. Keep your hands off me.
And it came to a point where one of the men said that if they were back in the hood, he would put a cap in Elihue Parker's ass.
We're gonna see you.
The two men eventually got their belongings out of the car and left.
Don't worry about it. We'll be back.
But detectives can't help but wonder if the altercation in the parking lot might be connected to Elihue's disappearance.
My thought process was somebody did him harm. And now I need to find out who the people were that were threatening him just a couple of days before his disappearance.
Investigators decide to dig deeper into Elihue's personal life, searching for some skeletons that might be lurking in his closet. But it appears Elihue is squeaky clean.
From all accounts, Elihue was a super straight arrow. I mean, literally bring a Bible to work. I mean, he never cursed. His father was a pastor down in Florida, and he was just one of these guys. That's not something he would do.
He was just a nice guy. He was a good dude.
Though a little deeper digging reveals Elihue's personal life wasn't as picture-perfect as it initially appeared. It seems he and Kimberly had recently hit a rough patch.
They learned that the marriage was strained, that in June there were starting to be some issues and some problems within the marriage.
Elihue was working long hours, and I think that she just felt like she wasn't in the place in her life that she wanted to be.
Thank you, Ms. Parker, for coming in today. We wanted to ask you some follow-up questions on Elihue.
His career was being in the Marine Corps. He enjoyed to be in the Marine Corps, and that was his life, to be in the Marines, and she kind of took a separate path.
When investigators approach Kimberly a second time, she's more forthcoming with the details of their rocky romance.
You know, being married to the military, it just wasn't what I thought it was. I was alone all the time. Elihue, he worked all day, every day.
I never considered myself being married to the military, but after being in a relationship with him, I quickly realized that the military is very much so involved in your relationship.
They're always in your business. It was kind of hard for us.
According to Kimberly, by June 2000, there was so much distance between her and Elihue that they decided to separate.
Who asked for the separation?
I did.
I told him that our marriage is not working, so he still wanted to keep the marriage, and he pretty much told me, well, whenever you get this out of our system, we'll work this out, but divorce is not going to be an answer.
Elihue moved into his own apartment. His wife was not on the lease.
He was actually still paying her rent at her apartment while they were separated, so that shows me that Elihue was a stand-up guy.
I mean, I loved him. He was my husband. So yes, I did have an interest in rekindling the relationship. But at the time, I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. I felt like maybe eventually we'll get it right.
After interviewing Kim, detectives turned their attention to the couple's friends. According to them, even though Kimberly and Elihue were now separated, there was one thing that kept them in constant contact with one another, for better or worse.
Elihue and Kim had one vehicle to share, and that brought about a lot of tension
Well, of course, you know, when you get in the situation where you're sharing a car with someone, you don't exactly have the same amount of freedom that you would have if you had your own car. You know, you don't have the ability to be, you know, spontaneous and say, okay, I want to go, you know, I want to go shopping or I want to go here. When you're needing to pick somebody up or drop somebody off, it does limit your schedule and limit your day. And so I could see that could definitely wear on someone's nerves.
And friends tell investigators something else had begun to bother Elihue, the thought that Kimberly wasn't the only one driving their car.
He was telling me about his suspicion of it being used by other individuals. There was excessive mileage on his vehicle. He smelled smoke in the vehicle. There was cigarette burns supposedly in the seat.
They was just fighting back and forth about the car. If one had it, they'd hide the car. If she had it, she'd hide the car. It was just more back and forth about a vehicle.
Investigators begin to wonder, could an argument over the vehicle have led to Elihue's disappearance? And could it be tied to the confrontation at the recruitment center? On August 3rd, 4 days after his disappearance, investigators decide to search Elihue's apartment. Much like when Sergeant Striblin first came looking for Elihue, the TV is still on.
The TV was still playing on the channel that shows the gate where you come in the apartment.
But other than the TV, nothing else seems too out of the ordinary.
Hey, look right there.
There were no signs of forced entry into Elihue's apartment, but once you got into the apartment, you can tell that there was a physical struggle and a physical confrontation in Elihue's apartment.
But just who had Elihue let into his home? And what had sparked their confrontation? To detectives, it doesn't appear robbery is a motive. However, detectives do make a discovery that suggests blood has recently been shed in the apartment.
They did find a red substance on his couch. Then they needed to, of course, get that tested to see if it was blood.
We need the forensics team down here.
That red stain on the couch, it could be anything from Kool-Aid, it could be an animal who bled and got injured, or it could most definitely be human blood.
Armed with this potential blood evidence and details of the Parkers' crumbling marriage, detectives decide it's time to pay Kimberly Parker yet another visit. What Kimberly says next will change the entire scope of the investigation.
As soon as we showed up, we told her why we were there, that we were investigating a report of her husband missing. And her first words was she wasn't talking to us without an attorney.
Police in Lewisville, Texas are on a mission to find missing Marine Sergeant Elihue Parker. They've discovered evidence of a potentially violent struggle inside Elihue's apartment. And they've also learned that 3 days before Elihue disappeared, 2 unknown men accosted him at work.
Come on, man, let's go, man.
He's threatened by one of them, saying I'd bust a cap in your ass. That's a huge red flag, so we need to find out who those guys are.
Keep your hands off me, let's go.
And perhaps most importantly, detectives have discovered that Elihue's storybook romance with new wife Kimberly wasn't quite so picture-perfect after all.
There could have been 1,000 different reasons why Elihue Parker went missing. Maybe he was a victim of a violent crime. There were many different things that may have happened to Sergeant Parker.
Until investigators can identify the 2 men from the incident at Elihue's office, there's only one person who can potentially shed light on this mystery.
They wanted to talk to Kimberly at that point.
But when officers knock on her apartment door on August 3rd, the reception they receive is anything but welcoming.
When police go to interview Kimberly, she's actually quite uncooperative.
We wanted to follow up on Elihue's missing report, Bert.
I don't have anything to say to you guys. I want a lawyer.
Her first words was she wasn't talking to us without an attorney. That's a definite red flag, because most of the time people are concerned about what you're doing and thinking that you're not doing enough.
If the first thing they tell you is talk to my attorney, that's an issue. I mean, you're like, okay, this is not going good.
This is your report, though. We're here to help you, Mr. Parker.
You gave me the report. That's when I just need to ask you some questions about what happened. So she said, okay, well, come in.
Once inside, detectives notice that Kimberly isn't home alone.
Who's downstairs, Mr. Parker?
They heard some noises and noticed that there were some men in the back and asked the men to come out.
I need everybody to come upstairs.
It turns out one of the three men is a co-worker of Kim's, 22-year-old Damian Huckabee. The other two are his friends, 22-year-old Dexter Hodge and 25-year-old Kendall Watson.
Those guys, they look bad. They look like thugs.
Do you know anything about Mr. Parker missing?
They were very evasive. They weren't going to talk to us without an attorney, and we took their pictures.
So my first thought was, we got to find out if these guys were the ones threatening Elihue.
Mr. Parker, we'll get back to you on those questions.
So we took the photos down to the recruiting office, showed the photos to Sergeant Striblin.
I'd like for you to look at a few photos, if you could, for us today. Tell us if you recognize any of these gentlemen that were involved in the altercation with Sergeant Parker.
Sergeant Striblin pointed out Damian Huckabee as being one of the two.
The positive identification of Damian Huckabee links Kimberly Parker to the incident at the recruitment center. But what about the other men police met in Kim's apartment, Dexter Hodge and Kendall Watson?
Do you recognize them?
No. The other gentleman was stocky and round-faced. These guys are skinny.
They said the other guy was much bigger in stature and really didn't say much, that Damian did all the talking.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Identifying the second man is crucial to moving the investigation forward. But before police have a chance to make that happen, there's another disturbing development. That afternoon, Detective Edward Barrett receives a call from a sheriff's department 150 miles away in East Texas.
I got a call from Smith County, and they had found the body.
It was a river bottom area that was very isolated. It was a place that people went to take their old car tires and dispose of them, to take their old refrigerators. It was a place where people took things when they didn't want people to find them.
According to the sheriff's department, the man's body is wrapped in cellophane and bed sheets. Peeling back the sodden layers, the cause of death is immediately apparent.
He was shot in the chest. It was one shot to the chest, and it was fatal.
A further search of the body confirms the victim's identity.
They were 99.999% sure this was Elihue Parker they'd fished out of the river.
Elihue kept his Marine Corps ID and driver license in his sock. That's when they finally identified him.
For those close to Elihue, their worst fears are now realized.
I knew he was going to come up dead because it's unlike him. His mother hadn't heard from him. I knew it. And so I felt bad, of course.
The search for Elihue Parker is now over. But the search for who killed him and why is only beginning. And as the pieces come together, the truth is shaping up to be stranger than fiction.
When a case like this pops up in a quiet town, it sends shockwaves through the community.
On August 3, 2000, the search for missing 23-year-old Marine Sergeant Elihue Parker comes to a heartbreaking end when authorities in Lewisville, Texas receive word Sergeant Parker's lifeless body has been fished out of a river 150 miles away in East Texas.
Elihue Parker was shot in the chest. They wrapped him in cellophane first, and then they wrapped him in bedsheets.
It's a tragic turn of events, but just how had the dedicated young soldier ended up there? Authorities aren't sure, but they have a pretty good idea who might know the answer.
Damian Huckabee was one of the men who had confronted Elihue at his workplace.
He's threatened, and not long after that, Elihue comes up missing.
Detectives make a beeline back to Kimberly Parker's home that afternoon and ask her, Dexter Hodge, Damian Huckabee, and Kendall Watson to come down to the station for questioning. Along the way, they break the news to Kimberly that Elihue is dead.
We brought her out, put her in the car. I said, hey, they found who we believe to be Elihue, and he's in the Sabine River in East Texas. And she started to cry.
I loved him. He was my husband. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I've never been in a situation like this. I couldn't do anything.
Inside an interrogation room, detectives ask Kimberly to describe how she came to know the three men at her house, particularly Damian Huckabee, the man identified by Sergeant Striblin as being part of the altercation with Elihue at the Marine Recruiting Center.
Damian and I are friends. We work together.
I met Damian at my job. And Kendall and Dexter, they pretty much were friends of Damien's. So I met them through Damien.
So are you co-workers? Do you guys date?
I mean, not exactly.
Have you guys been intimate?
Yes.
According to Kimberly, Damien filled a much-needed void in her young life.
He was pretty much like a party guy. And at that time, getting out of a real serious relationship, I wasn't really focused on a real serious relationship. I was promiscuous, and coming out of a marriage, I pretty much started just dating and being free-spirited.
She is, sex, drugs, rock and roll, let's do it, smoke dope and do the, get what you can out of life and whatever.
Eventually, Kimberly says, one thing led to another.
Damien moved in after a period of time. It was not planned, but he ended up having one shirt over and two shirts over. So eventually, I look up, there's a whole wardrobe there.
Elihue, when he broke up with his wife, when he knows or at least suspects she's having sexual relations with Damien, Elihue actually pays for her apartment while she's living in it with the other guy. They tell him, you're crazy. You shouldn't give that woman a dime. She's over there sleeping with these other guys, and you're giving her money. He goes, well, biblically, that's my wife, and I have to take care of her.
While Kimberly admits to having an affair with Damien, she's adamant neither of them had anything to do with Elihue's death.
I went over to his house on Sunday, and he wasn't there.
She claimed that on that night, she was with the other three subjects, and they went to a movie at the Grand Theater. She said they went to Grapevine Mills Mall.
In separate interview rooms just down the hall, police are asking Dexter Hodge, Damien Huckabee, and Kendall Watson the same laundry list of questions.
They said they went to a movie that night at a mall.
Their alibis seem consistent, except for one critical detail.
They said they went to Northtown Mall, which is in Mesquite, which is 30 miles from Grapevine Mills Mall.
Which is obviously two very different malls in two very different neighborhoods. And so that really just raised red flags for the police at that point, because obviously the stories just didn't match.
The only thing they agreed on, they said they went to a movie that night at a mall, but there were different malls and different movies.
Recognizing the cracks in their stories, detectives apply pressure on Kimberly's lover, Damien Huckabee.
You had an argument with him. He ends up dead a few days later, and you didn't have anything to do with that.
Look, I ain't got nothing to do with that. I promise you, I swear to God.
He brought up the altercation at the sergeant's office. Well, Damien said, he admitted, yeah, I was there and I was mad because Elihue kept stealing Kimberly's car and wouldn't let her have it.
Damien steadfastly denies having anything to do with Elihue's murder, and even goes so far as to give police the name of the man who was with him at the recruiting office.
Marquise.
The Marquise in question is a friend of Damien's named Marquise Brown.
Investigators found out that Marquise Brown lived in Gladewater, which is actually very close to where the body was found.
That's a definite red flag.
Yeah, at that point, I didn't know if it was a love triangle thing or if it was, there was some kind of drug issue.
But despite their suspicions, detectives don't have any hard evidence on which to hold Damien, Kimberly, Dexter Hodge, or Kendall Watson. Later that day, all four of them are released. Not that detectives are giving up on the case. On August 8th, police finally track down Marquise Brown and bring him in for questioning. Detectives begin by asking Marquise about the confrontation outside Elihue's recruitment center. Marquise admits he was there.
During that altercation at the Marine Corps recruiting station, were any threats made? Somewhat.
Marquise says that following the argument with Elihue, they returned to Kim's apartment. But it was clear Damien was still extremely angry at Elihue.
They said that he'd get what was coming to him.
According to Marquise, over the next few days, Damien and his friends Dexter Hodge and Kendall Watson hatched a plan.
What plans were those? Kill Mr. Parker.
Marquise Brown, he really kind of lets the cat out of the bag and just tells them everything.
But Marquise also claims that the real ringleader of the plot to murder Elihue wasn't Damien Huckabee. Rather, it was Elihue's wife, Kimberly.
Kimberly Parker was the beneficiary of a $200,000 life insurance policy, and she wanted to collect on that money.
She said she get that money if he got killed.
Marquise says that following the altercation over the car, at Kimberly's behest, the plan to murder Elihue was put into action on the night of July 30th.
Kimberly Parker called her estranged husband and asked if they could talk on Sunday evening, and she said she wanted to come over.
Kim showed up. The apartments he lived in had security cameras.
She unloads the guys out of her car, and they all are off camera. She pulls up to the gate and says, "Oh, let me in." So he lets her in, and as she pulls in, they sneak around on foot.
What do you want, Ken?
When he looks through that eyeglass in his door, he just sees Kim.
Elihue, let me in. I just want to talk.
And little does he know that right outside the view of that eye hole is Damian Huckabee, Dexter Hodge, Kendall Watson, and Marquise Brown, all waiting to bust into that apartment.
According to Marquise Brown, the moment Elihue opened the door, all hell broke loose.
Come on, Elihue. You know, I just want to talk. Let me in.
The door flies open into the apartment, and Elihue is bum-rushed by 4 men. And Elihue, with his military training and his mental toughness, is able to put up a good fight for a while. Unfortunately, he is overpowered, and he is subdued by the 4 men, especially once the gun appears.
What they telling me you gonna do to him?
Told them that they were just gonna kidnap him and take him for a little joyride, see what it feels like to be misdone and stuff like that.
They kidnap him. They drive him in the direction of Gladewater, which is where Marquise Brown is from.
Along the way, Marquise claims they made a stop.
They dropped Kimberly Parker off at a friend's apartment, and then they headed off to East Texas, with Elihue Parker still in the trunk of that car.
En route, they stop at a convenience store and getting duct tape and cellophane.
But Marquise says that as the group neared Gladewater, he got cold feet.
And I was like, man, these guys, they just kidnapped this dude. They gonna kill him, and I asked them to drop me off.
As for what happened next, Marquise tells police he has no idea. It's a chilling story, but no one, not even the most seasoned detectives, have any idea the dark turn this twisted tale is about to take.
The scene at the river bottoms, the last moments of Elihue Parker's life, are very disturbing and very horrible.
For Elihue and Kimberly Parker, the move to Louisville, Texas in April of 2000 was supposed to be the start of an exciting new chapter in their lives. But less than 4 months later, their dreams of a bright future were dashed when Elihue was found shot to death and dumped in a river.
You just didn't see that many murders in Denton County, and especially murders as brutal as this one.
But perhaps the most shocking detail regarding Elihue's death is the one just conveyed to police by suspect Marquise Brown. According to Marquise, Elihue's estranged wife, Kimberly, is the mastermind behind the murder, and her lover, Damian Huckabee, and his friends, Dexter Hodge and Kendall Watson, helped her carry it out.
He tells him that he was there with Kimberly and her friends when they discussed killing Elihue Parker. And he tells him that it would have been for the insurance policy.
Marcus knew not only that there was a life insurance policy, but he knew the exact amount, that it was a $200,000 policy. And in my opinion, that lent a lot of credibility to that statement as well as the other statements that he was making.
So with those facts, with him being able to say these things and corroborate the facts as what we found on the body, that was enough to get warrants for all of them.
Holding Marquise on a kidnapping charge, detectives prepare to make their next move. On August 9th, they descend on Kimberly Parker's apartment.
We kick the door. Our 3 guys are laying on the floor, and Kimberly comes busting out of the bedroom.
They threw me on the floor, and they showed me a capital murder warrant, and they arrested me.
Kim's 3 alleged co-conspirators are also taken into custody. Still, Kimberly maintains her innocence.
I was flabbergasted, but I felt like when they got all the facts to the case, I felt like I would be released.
But for someone who maintains their innocence, Kimberly remains surprisingly tight-lipped.
She didn't want to make a statement. She said, I got an attorney, I don't want to talk.
Just went to his job.
Fortunately for investigators, when confronted with Marquise Brown's statement, the other 3 suspects are more than willing to talk, especially Kimberly's lover, Damian Huckabee.
I was the first one to rush in. I had a little 380.
Whose gun was it?
Kim had already had the gun, and I don't know where she got it from.
But Damian claims he had no idea Kimberly actually wanted to go through with the murder plot.
I just wanted to scare the man so he could do right, so he could stop being an asshole, because that's what he was being.
I never knew anything about an insurance policy. I never knew anything about, what he get if he died, a beneficiary, anything.
I thought we was gonna tie him up and take him, because Dexter knows about the woods, so I guess we're gonna take him in the woods and just, kind of give him a good scare.
Take my keys, It's too late to talk now. We don't want to talk no more.
On the ground. I saw Kendall point the gun at him, right to his chest.
Don't shoot me, man.
I took a step back, because I'm thinking, oh my God, he's finna shoot this man.
Next thing you know, shot goes off. Now this changes the whole game. This changes everything.
By Damian Huckabee's account, Kendall Watson is the one who shot and killed Elihue Parker. But Kendall and suspect number 4, Dexter Hodge, tell a different story.
They dropped Kimberly off at the friend's house. They drop off Marquise Brown at his house. They go to this place called the Bottoms.
What's the Bottoms? Can you describe it to me?
Just a bunch of woods, folks picking trash out there.
Okay. And what happened?
Well, from there, that's where let Elihue out the trunk.
They get him out of the car, they put him on his knees, he begs for his life. He tells them, I'll give you the car, I'll give you my ATM card, we can work this out.
Man, take my ATM card, man. I don't need the money, man.
But according to Dexter Hodge and Kendall Watson, it was Damian who had other ideas.
Damian had started talking about shooting it.
Oh, so you just gonna really shoot this man? I ain't come out here for that.
My exact words was, I ain't come out here for that. I did not come out here to kill nobody.
I told him, I'm like, man, I don't want to shoot him, so I don't even want to see it. So I just turned around, and then I heard the gunshot.
Everyone says Damian had the gun, but none of them ever say Damian's the one that pulled the trigger on him.
With 4 suspects telling 3 different stories, investigators aren't sure who to believe. But one thing is for certain.
Elihue Parker was executed at that river bottom in East Texas.
They ended up wrapping him up in cellophane and duct tape and drove to the Sabine River and threw his body in.
This guy was such a straight-laced, good, all-around hero, And to have this happen to him, it's really sad.
On August 9th, 2000, Kimberly Parker, Damian Huckabee, Kendall Watson, and Dexter Hodge are charged with aggravated kidnapping and murder. But with enough conflicting statements to fill the pages of a crime novel, no one could anticipate the sort of fireworks that would go off when the case went to trial.
He pulled his pistol and put it to my head, and then after he put it to my head, he asked me if I was going to snitch on him.
On June 11, 2001, nearly a year after Marine Sergeant Elihue Parker was left for dead in a river in East Texas, his estranged wife Kimberly Parker is led into a courtroom in Denton County, Texas, to stand trial for his brutal abduction and murder.
The community reaction in this case was very strong. Justice needed to be done.
But if prosecutors hope to avenge Elihue's death, they'll have to do so without the weight of one of the original charges levied against Kimberly.
The capital murder charges were dropped, and they were dropped because the actual murder happened out in East Texas, so not in Denton County. We had a stronger case for aggravated kidnapping, and the punishment range was the same.
In their opening statements, prosecutors assert the difference between the 2 charges is little more than a technicality, and that either way, a good man died. And Elihue's wife, Kimberly, her lover, Damian Huckabee, and their 2 friends, Dexter Hodge and Kendall Watson, are to blame.
The night of the kidnapping was your classic Trojan horse. Kim was able to play on Elihue's affection for her, and that allowed Kim to be able to gain access to Elihue. But more importantly, it allowed Damian Huckabee and his friends access to attack Elihue Parker.
The motive, prosecutors assert, is one of the 7 deadly sins.
Kim was motivated by greed. She really wanted that insurance money.
I think Damian had a romantic interest in Kimberly and probably in some sick and twisted way thought that this was his way of cementing that relationship. And I also think he wanted the money. $200,000 is a lot of money.
With the confession of co-conspirator Marquise Brown, prosecutors say there's little doubt that Kimberly is guilty.
Marcus Brown knew details that only people involved in the crime would know, and he was giving us accurate statements about that. He wasn't embellishing, he was telling us the truth about that.
But Kimberly's defense attorneys assert their client had no idea her lover Damian and his pals planned on murdering her husband, and she certainly wasn't there when the crime was committed.
The defense strategy in this case was that Kim Parker was nowhere near the crime scene. Kim Parker wasn't there, so how should she be guilty of the crime?
Hoping to bolster that claim, Kimberly's attorneys roll the dice and call Kimberly Parker as a witness in her own defense.
They called Kimberly Parker, and as soon as I heard that, I was thunderstruck. I couldn't believe that Kim was going to get up on the stand and expose herself to cross-examination.
According to Kimberly, the only reason she helped Damian and his friends access Elihue's apartment was because she wanted one thing: her car.
I really didn't feel that nothing really detrimental was going to happen to him. I felt like they were just trying to scare him to give me my car back.
But Kimberly asserts Damian and his friends took matters too far after they dropped her off on their way to East Texas.
The first thing I asked is, well, what happened to Elihue? Damian's response was, oh, we killed that nigga. Just like that. That was his response, excuse my French. I couldn't believe that he just said he killed him. So I was in total shock.
Her testimony was that Damian Huckabee was behind it, and those guys had carried this out, basically taken whatever involvement that she had in an attempt to scare Elihue and gone way too far.
As for why she never shared this information with authorities, she claims Damian had threatened to take her life as well.
I swear, listen, I'm not gonna snitch. You think I'm playing?
He pulled his pistol and put it to my head and asked me if I was gonna snitch on him.
We can do this shit right now.
My response is no, I'm not gonna snitch on you. You know, if someone has a gun to your head, you're gonna comply with whatever they ask you to.
It's powerful testimony. But would the jury believe Kimberly?
She got up there and told her story, and in my opinion, was totally unbelievable.
Kim Parker presents herself as someone with a degree of intelligence and a degree of attractiveness that leads people to want to listen to her and to believe her. But unfortunately, there's something very sinister and very evil underneath that nice veneer.
We're always confident, but you just never know what those 12 people in that box is going to come up with.
On June 14th, 2001, the jury returns with its verdict.
They came back guilty in under an hour. Kim Parker showed no emotion when the jury pronounced their guilty verdict against her. She stood there stone-faced, with an icy look on her face.
The final result of Kimberly's trial was a 99-year sentence.
I was flabbergasted. I just didn't understand why I'd be charged guilty of this crime, because I really felt like I was innocent.
I was very happy with Kim getting 99 years. I was satisfied with that.
In separate trials, justice was equally merciless for Kimberly's co-conspirators.
Damian Huckabee went to trial, got life. Dexter Hodge pled to 40 years, and Kendall Watson went to trial and got life.
For his part, Marquise Brown received 5 years probation. Although everyone involved was punished for the crime, more than a decade on, the loss of Elihue Parker still resonates with friends and loved ones.
My overall feelings about this case were that it was just so wasteful. The waste of a good man for no good reason whatsoever. For no reason other than greed.
This story is almost 14 years old now. He was such a good dude, and I only knew him for 8 months. It bothers me still to this day. I think about him a lot.
It's 14 years, there's so many questions run through my head about this situation. So many regrets, you know, so many regrets that I have. I'm paying for it, you know.
What Kimberly did not know was that Elihue had gone to the Marine Corps office in Dallas, Texas, I believe the Friday before this all occurred, and had changed his primary beneficiary from Kimberly Parker to his mom. So she wouldn't have got it anyway.